Donald Trump announced this week that he is interested in having some sort of child care help in policy for American parents, including possibly parental leave, although his initial explanations about how he would pay for it are absolutely comical and wouldn't pay for it. But he is interested in it, but his supporters aren't exactly clear on exactly what sorts of parents should qualify for this. And you're going to see one Steve King in this video.
When you say encourage families, more babies and all that, would you include the LGBT community in that in terms of families to encourage having kids and expanding them?
I want to respect all people, but I want to promote the natural family, Chris, and I think that's the most wholesome thing that we can do. And
what's the natural family?
Is a man and a woman joined together, hopefully in holy matrimony, blessed by God with children.
But you do know that even on a scientific level, when we look at social research, they're finding out more and more that babies adopted in to LGBT families are doing just as well, if not better, than what you call a natural family. What does that suggest to you?
I think I'd need to look a little further into some of that research. And, we got down the global warming argument and found out there was another side to that equation, too.
Jimmy and I were both distracted by his tie.
I was distracted by his tie.
That was a bold tie choice.
You should have heard what he said.
I didn't pay attention to any of it. I do appreciate that he wants to respect all people, but he's going to power through it. He's going to disrespect a lot of them.
That's so funny.
I know, I love
I
it.
want to respect all people. I can't.
Yes. So look, he's against that community. We know that. But in this case, that's Chris Cuomo, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, I wasn't sure. I don't watch a lot of TV.
He's very tall.
He's very tall, and he's actually going to bring some science to this discussion, and Steve King is going to have an opportunity to accept or reject science. Let's see how he chooses.
Oh, the answer just makes
I think we need to go with the things we know work.
Right, but what we know that what works is loving the kid, giving them the attention, giving them the time. There is no reason to believe that you have to have a man and a woman to do that. And if we see anything with the breakdown of the family, the man and the woman thing has its own shortfalls, right? Look at the divorce rate, look at single-parent families, look at all the destruction of children and family welfare in this country. It doesn't seem like a sure thing. Why not encourage anything that gets a child loved and provided for?
Chris, I just don't think it's true that there's no reason to believe that a child needs a man and a woman to raise them. A child needs a father and a mother to raise them.
No, I didn't say there's no reason to believe it. I'm saying there's plenty of reason to believe it's not the only way it can be done well. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm not discouraging or disparaging anyone, but I'm suggesting we should put our energy into promoting the model that has worked, and that is the natural family, or you could call it the nuclear family, and that's what the research that I see supports, and that's the human experience that we have for hundreds and hundreds of years.
I'm not discouraging or encouraging anyone, but I think we should encourage non-gays.
Yeah.
With money, literally, financially encourage them.
It's like comedy.
It is comedy, and here's the other thing that he's talking about this, and he's saying that holy matrimony and blessed by God with children. That's what he just said right there. And then when he talks about climate change, he says, well, it's not science, it's a religion, right? People who believe in it. So religion when it helps, science when it helps, right? Science is the mother, and it's unbelievable the way he can switch that around when it's convenient for Steve King.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that always strikes me, especially about him, but a lot of the people that take that stand on LGBT, is that it's not what God wants, it's not what God wants, it's what science is, a nuclear family. This is a mother and a father. But when science tells you there's global warming, no, that's a religion. They're crazy, they're nuts, they're a cult.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, tip of the hat to Chris Cuomo. I thought he did a great job there.
He did do a good job.
So I always rip him when he doesn't do a good job, so I got to give him a compliment when he does it.
And he's a great governor.
And he's a great governor. He does. Where does he find time to host CNN?
It's hard to believe.
When he's out there.
They don't even let him sit down.
Right.
I mean, he barely has time to privatize the schools.
That's true.
Anyway, yeah, that's Steve King. So we don't know how the policy will actually go. There's only been a few details so far. I have a feeling that they actually represent every single detail that Trump has thought about. But good on Chris Cuomo for acknowledging the science, both on climate change, also on LGBT parenting.